So another box showed up. Here's my 372 box. And goodies. There's other stuff in here too, but there's a 372 clone. It's MS365. Okay, well it's not steel clone. It's a Huztl clone, so it's not MS. 365. Okay, whatever. Again, the box is actually pretty robust. There is a hole in it over on the other, on this side. There's one hole. Let's see what that is. Yep, the heaviest thing in here, and this is actually a case separator. And this was on sale for like 30 bucks. Usually I see these on eBay for 70. So I was making a purchase anyway and might as well. Yep. We'll get to play with that. Pretty heavy looking. Not welded exactly straight, but sometimes you have to move the jaws here in or out depending on what you're doing. So I'm going to get this all out and separated and kind of see what we got. I'm pretty familiar with putting together 372s. I've done this quite a few times, so I have some semblance of an idea of what's going on. So I'll get back to you in a minute. So I'm excited about this 372 build. So these are Farmertech cases. So Chinese-made cases and Chinese-made bearings. Now the cases I don't necessarily have an issue with, at least not yet. The bearings, I don't know. In this saw, I think they're so easy to replace. I think they're kind of silly to not replace them. But before I go over that, one thing I did want to mention was that there was at least some surface corrosion here on the cases, and I tried a bunch of things to try to get it off, and you know what works really well? This stainless steel wheel on my Dremel, and I actually get these also Chinese made. Now the problem with Dremel is that you end up paying a bajillion dollars for this stuff, and you can get them in bulk. I mean, you get a whole baggie of these things for really inexpensive. A couple of baggies, I think, for 20 bucks, and they're full of these things. So don't worry about wearing these out. And man, they work great. They shine them right up. While you're ordering stuff from wherever that was, arbors. I guess it's an arbor. Collets, sorry. Collets. You might as well get a few collets. They come in bulk also, so buy a bunch. I do wear out the collets every now and again in here. So once you got that all kind of shined up, you can notice that there's a little bit of pitting and surface corrosion there. It's now shined up really nice. You just run the Dremel over that. That'll be a much better surface to seal to. Kind of the first thing that I wanted to do on these cases was, I want to get the crank in, I want to get the bearings out, all that stuff. But before I forget, got to deal with this stuff here. The two bar studs are definitely something you want to address before you do, anything else. These things do go right in here. Before you put the case together, you do want to knock these down. You can make sure they're straight, knock them down with a hammer. That's one way to do it. They don't need any sealer on them because they are press fit and they're pretty tight. Again, get a punch. Make sure they're centered because they're rectangular in shape, and that is important. So you can give it a few wraps with the hammer. But another way to do it is the old bar nut method. So what you're going to need here is probably a couple of washers would be good. You got to make sure this doesn't spin, but you hit it with your impact, 13 millimeters. And just before it seats fully, don't want to go too far without getting some extra washers on there, but just before it seats fully, you can go back and actually reorient it. So you keep an eye on it going down. I don't know if you can see, but that's pretty well seated. Add a couple more washers. That's it. And with the impact, you can tell, you can actually hear it, that it sounds different. So that's one installed. So that's a little bit off center, and I'm going to need to want to back that off a bit. And the best way to do it is to use dual nuts. So use two nuts, and then you tighten them one against the other, and then you can move that any way you want. If somebody has a better way to do this, please, let me know. These seem quite tight. And if it's late at night, like it is, and you don't want to use the impact, run it down by hand. 2 bar studs installed. Now you've got those. Now hopefully we can turn our attention to the case. Okay, starter cover bolts. Those 2 look like they are for the ignition coil. I don't know what that other one's for. This is a specialty bolt with a smooth end here. That is for, it's a limiter for the gas tank. These are case bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Wait a minute. Pretty sure there's only 6 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 tapped holes, 6 case bolts. These are quite long, but they look pretty nice actually. Metal trays always help. .372 gasket, and also important are the positioning pins. Don't want to forget those. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to do this next part in one continuous shot. So I have to make sure that I've got everything here ready to rock. So these are Chinese bearings, of course, and I'd rather put in the Nachis, which are Japanese made. Now the thing about these is I got these for a very good price, but they did come shielded. And you don't need the shields for this type of work, so you get rid of the shields. And you do that by taking a very small screwdriver and just prying the shields out. Once you get a lip, you just, and that shield comes out. These are already packed with grease. So you want to make sure that your surface is clean that you're working on. There you go. Pry it on up. That's it. The bearing is completely undamaged. Off to the side. Now obviously you can use your own choice of bearings here, but on occasion if you can find Nachis for a good price, then that's the one you want to pick up. Obviously SKFs are good too, and I've used NTN with good results. There we go. Lift comes out. If this screwdriver was a tad sharper, it would lift even better. Okay, off to the side. So my intention here is most definitely press these out at room temperature to put new in also at room temperature, and then install the crank again at room temperature. Do it in one continuous shot, that way you can see how fast or slow this is. Let's do one other thing first, and that's these seals. I don't like these seals, so let's pop those out. I happen to have my favorite seal tool here. Get it under, lift up. This is just something, this is a tool that I made from an old screwdriver. You have to look at the surface and make sure there's no gouges, and there's not. We'll go over seals later. Junk. Same thing on this side. You do not want to put a gouge in the case. This side's better off with probably a straight flat blade. Once it's lifted, it comes right up. Okay, so we're good. So let's see if we can do this in one continuous shot. You timing me? You ready here? I've got some pieces of threaded rod, which I explained in the last video. A couple of nuts, a washer, just a bunch of other washers, some spacers, again more threaded rod, the tools that I've explained in previous videos. Got my 1184 ready to go. I got my case gasket. I've got my 518 over here. I've got some blue Loctite ready to put everything together. Everything's nice and clean. So the first thing we need to do is get those bearings, the cheap bearings, out. So let's put the positioners in. This is a through-hole positioner. That's a solid positioner, just so everybody knows. See, wait a minute. Why are we putting the cases together? And the answer is because we're going to put a piece of threaded rod here. These are 6203 races, and this is actually a 6202 race. We're going to cinch that down like that. That goes through like that. Now we can do some fender washers. Make it fairly straight. So now we're actually pulling. What we're doing is we're pulling the bearing through and using this case half as retention effectively. So I'm not going to use the impact here. I'm in a bit of a hurry in the sense that I'm racing the clock, but I just want to show people how fast I can do this. Okay, that's one. This would be much faster with the impact, obviously. But it's kind of late, so I'm not going to bother with that. That's one Chinese bearing out. Let's do the other one. Essentially do the same thing, just on the other side. These are big fender washers. They help a lot. And you know what? Right here, that kind of are in the way. They're in the way a little bit. So it's a little bit too big of a washer. There we go. 1/2 inch washer, 5/8 washer. Good enough. It'll hold. Just need to hold fairly on center. Set the same thing over here. We tighten the whole thing down. We're going to start to press that bearing right out the case. Good. No torch, no hammer. No excitement. My adapters fall out and fall through. Okay, now need to get this case back apart. By the way, those positioners are tight. Oh, geez, okay, don't want to break anything. Okay, there we go. Very tight positioners. This one I think is awful tight. Too tight. Whatever, I guess we're going to leave it. Okay. So now we got to get the new bearings in. So let's get this set up here. And again, I think we're a little bit... On the PTO side, you need something that's a little sloppy fit. Little sloppy fit. All right. Actually, you know what we'll do? Take that out for the moment. Let's get the bearing positioned. And you want the bearing just, just hit it a little on the outer race. Not the inner race. You can press on it and make sure it doesn't go. But you want it as square as possible. If she ain't square, it isn't going to be a good thing. Oh. Well, the one thing I was going to do was actually put a little bit of Loctite on here. One of my YouTube guys commented, thinking maybe I should use some grease, and actually they commented, said, something about a sealer. I was like, I could use Loctite for that. I could use my 518. Just put it around the bearing. It just adds a tiny bit of lubrication. and eventually a seal. Not that you really need it. Okay, that's going to go fine. That's going to go through there. The 1/2-inch washers fit brilliantly, by the way. Absolutely brilliant. And just take a nut. Throw a few more washers on there. I know I had some. Put a washer on there. That's fine. I think I made this a little too long. What do you think? Center it up, tighten it up. And start turning. And make sure it's going and make sure it's square. That's a good sound. You can check and look. That's tight. That's it. Because of the coarse thread, it doesn't really allow you to over tighten it. There's just not enough mechanical advantage with the coarse thread for you to do a lot of damage there. There's your bearing installed, again all at room temperature. Let's put the other one in the other side while I've got the tool out and ready to go here. And let's do a little bit of the Loctite 518 in here. You don't need much. There's really not any need for this. It's more like elegance. I'm going to call it elegance. Let's call it elegance. Obviously, don't put the Chinese ones back in. Make sure you know which one you're putting in. Okay. Make sure she's square. Two washers and your nut. Make sure it's centered. Good. Start turning. Should go pretty easy. And by the way, you're going to notice that these 1/2-inch washers go right down in because they're just slightly smaller diameter, as luck would have it. Hold this. Bearing is nicely seated in there. No lateral forces on the inner race. That's good to go. Okay. Let's do the clutch side with the crank. I got to pull the crank through there, and ideally it's best to put the crank in the vise for the time being. So let's do that. Clutch side. Good. Used my spacer there. This is an M14 by 1.25 left-hand thread, and you know what? Let's use one or two big washers here. So you grab what threads you can, and then you heave ho. And the one thing about this is a tad awkward is there's a bearing involved here. You got to keep. Am I getting this? Yeah. You got to keep the connecting rod this way and the whole chassis that way too. Not that big of a deal. Just turn it on down. You can always back it off, check and see how you're doing. Again, this is not something that's going to let you go too far. Because of the mechanical advantage here. Check it. That's it. That's seated. So right-hand thread. Sorry, left-hand thread. This is righty-loosey in this case. So the washer comes off, and this is all spacers of whatever flavor you want to use. There you have it. So let's go back over here. Again, one continuous shot if at all possible. Doing my best here, folks. Not bad for an amateur. Now we break out the 3-bond. This is Walt's favorite. And I'm starting to agree with him. Obviously you want these chassis nice and clean before you do this, and you want a thin layer of this stuff. It needs to be just barely wetted. That's all you need, like a wetting agent almost. And what you do is you let it kind of, what Walt calls, skin up before you do too much. That's a pretty thin layer. While I'm at it, we'll do this other side. Is this type of thing absolutely necessary? Well, there's debate on that, but you know, you have a gasket here that is not an OEM case gasket. So you might say, well, you might want a little extra something. All around, evenly dabbed, evenly coated. Good. Let's do one other thing. A little bit of blue Loctite. Case bolts. Where'd the positioning pin go? Uh-oh. Sorry, I can't do one continuous shot because I've lost my positioning pin. Oh, stupid positioning pin. Okay, I lost my positioning pin. Alright, this one goes here, not there. I was going to cheat and use a different one, but you can't do that because they're different sizes. So now we can put this one down, and right about now you'd be heating something up and chilling that down, and which you don't have to do. So now it doesn't quite get you to the positioning pins. It just doesn't. So I wonder, does one of those case bolts get you to the right. Not quite long enough. Ah, then it doesn't move. At least it doesn't move. Okay, I don't want it to move. Alright. Now we're going to use this guy with that. Yep. That one spacer. And we do need a Sharpie. Ah. Do need a Sharpie as a crank stop. Okay. And now all you gotta do is crank it down. And make sure that it's going. Yep, it's in the positioning pins. Lost my Sharpie. Let's let gravity take effect here. Very controlled. There's no hurry here. Please tell me I've been getting this. There, pop. If something's not quite aligned, just align it. Make sure it's in alignment. Because this should go like butter. If it's not, something else is wrong. Usually the positioning pins are out of alignment. Almost there. That's really about it. That's it. Back it off. No damage done there. We have a case that's together, together, together. And now we can take our case bolts, put them down. Good. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Triple check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is your crank installed, ready to rock, in I don't know how many minutes. All at room temperature. There's just no sense in using a torch here, people. Okay, so next part will be seals. We'll go over that in the next video. I want to conclude this video by saying I'm really having fun with using no heat, using the proper tools. So, thanks for watching this. Don't forget to subscribe.